Hello everyone, Wesley Campbell here, and we have an amazing podcast for you today. And we have our good friends Brian and Candace Simmons, although it's only Brian in the studio today. And Brian is a unique, I want to say a unique bird. I mean, this man he gets saved, and within years, like a couple years, he's in the jungles of Panama. They're translating a lost tribe, their language, from no written script to learning the language and making a Bible out of their language. Amazing. Small babies, we're going to hear all about that. And then, planting churches, renewal, revival, Holy Spirit, holy smoke, everything's breaking out. And then a visitation from the Lord Jesus himself, commissioning him to translate the Word of God into a new Passion Translation. So Brian and Candace have been to 40, 50 nations of the world. They're conference speakers. They're in demand everywhere. You must get and listen and read the Passion Translation. You have to read the Passion Translation. So without any more introduction, Brian, welcome to Conversions Podcast.
Thank you, Wesley. What a joy to be with you, my friend. A treat to be in the studio with you today.
And here you are in beautiful Kelowna.
I love it. This is paradise. It's summertime while we're recording, and it's just gorgeous here. Thanks for inviting me.
Gorgeous. So we want to hear all about your conversion. First and foremost, how did you actually come into faith and salvation in Jesus Christ? Also, were you raised religious? Did you have any background? Did you go to church? Did you have any visitations? Did you almost die? Was someone praying for you? What happened in your life pre-God?
Well, I had a very dark childhood, not necessarily childhood, but when I became a teenager, I wandered so far from God. I was taken to church by my parents. I still remember going to church, and as soon as my parents went one direction, I went out the back door of the church, and at 12, 13 years old, I'd smoke cigarettes there on the steps outside the church. And then when I could tell the service was over, I'd sneak back in and say hi to mom and dad, jump in the car.
And they couldn't
home.
smell the smoke?
Well, gum. Thank God for gum. And
gum in those days.
Yeah, so church was not a legitimate part of my life whatsoever. And growing up...
What age did you go to church?
Oh, from maybe 8 or 9 years old.
Were your parents committed to Christ at that time?
Nope. My father was a wealthy, important man in the community. And at that time in his life, church was a way to have a standing, a way to, to be somebody in the community. It was really more of a social club. The church itself did not preach a strong gospel message.
What church was it?
It was Disciples of Christ. It was a Christian church in name, but they like to baptize you, and that's about it.
What state?
That was in the state of Kansas.
Kansas? You grew up in Kansas?
Yeah, in the Midwest,
wow.
Flatlander.
Did you ever get almost sucked up by a tornado?
More than once.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We saw them pass over our house multiple times. We'd have to go in our basement. Everybody who lives in Kansas has a basement.
Wow.
Because of the tornado issue.
Wow. So what became dark in your teens?
Drugs. It wasn't long that I connected at maybe 15, 16-year-old with the wrong crowd. And I went from smoking pot one day to dropping LSD the next.
Really?
I mean, it was that...
Like in a week?
Within a day.
A day.
And from that day forward, for the course of about 3 years, every day I was stoned. Every day I was on a drug. Psilocybin, mescaline, LSD. I was active in bringing drugs into our community. I'm ashamed to say all of these things, but this is part of my dark past.
These were the 60s?
Yeah. The late 60s.
So you were born in what year?
I was born in 51.
51, wow. So you were right in the Beatles, the Stones, LSD, the Doors,
rock
everything.
Concerts, the Woodstock generation. Totally.
You were in it.
Long hair. I had hair way down my back, wore a dog collar. Kind of rough, but maybe inside still just a little bit of a teddy bear. But yeah, when you become a hippie, you really buy into that whole culture. I remember hitchhiking around the country, just going from place to place, never knowing who you're going to be with, where you're going to sleep. I was by myself.
And you were just stoned continually.
Absolutely.
How'd you get the money?
Well, now that I think about it, I wonder how I did get it. I know I did steal a few things. I mean, I feel like
whichever way you could do it.
Exactly.
You worked, you sold, you did this,
I could honestly say I was a pathetic person.
Wow.
Depressed, attempted suicide at least once. Just a darkened guy who needed Christ. And it was right in that time I got a draft notice in the U.S. military.
To go to Vietnam?
To go to Vietnam. And I ran from that for a season. I pondered coming to Canada.
Now, a draft notice means if you run, you can go to jail.
Absolutely.
So you got it and you ran.
I got it and I ran, and it would mark me for life. But here's the cool story is the day before I had to be present, I was in Arizona, and I felt a strong tug on my heart that I was to go into the military. I know that sounds crazy, but I called my father. He arranged an airplane flight take me from Phoenix to Kansas City, where I was inducted into the Army like that, and started basic training. They shaved off my lovely curly golden locks.
So you were like that movie Tribes, where they took that thing and went right over.
Well, the barbers there in the military, they loved it. They loved getting the hippies because they would give us a hard time.
Just terrorize you.
To make sure we were shaved bald completely.
So they shaved you?
Absolutely. So that's where I started basic training, and I got into trouble immediately. I hung out with those that are likewise drafted, and us draftees, most of us were pot-smoking hippies that had to come because of our draft notice. So I found them, and we all were able to go off base, and we'd get money and buy our drugs. And eventually I got into trouble and was facing a court-martial.
Okay, you're how old at that time?
I'm, at that time, 19.
Okay, so you went out. Did you drop out of high school?
I finished high school barely.
So you barely got through high school.
I was a D student.
A D student. You travel the country. You're smoking dope.
Yep.
All sorts of drugs. You're drafted. Now you're 19. You're in trouble facing court-martial.
Exactly.
Okay, what happens?
I got an invitation to go off base. A Christian serviceman looked me in the eye and said, "You need help." And I said, "I sure do. I'm in trouble." He said, "Come with me this weekend." He said, "We're going to go off base." I said, "Okay, great. What are we going to do?" He said, "Well, there's going to be girls there." I said, "I'm going." So I went for that, but he fooled me. It was a Christian retreat. It was a Christian base outside the post where they would evangelize and teach the gospel, preach the word to young servicemen. I went, and I still remember to this day, the first message I ever heard anybody ever teach from the Bible was Sodom and Gomorrah, and I knew that was speaking to me.
Really?
He had everybody close their eyes. When they did, I ran. I ran out that door.
You ran out the door?
I ran out the door, but I couldn't get very far. I just sat down on the steps and put my face in my hands and cried like a child. But the next weekend, I said, I'm going to go back again.
Really? And there was something drawing you?
There's something drawing me. I couldn't understand what this was. I mean, who would want me? I was such a dark guy. It's like, why would God even chase me down? But he was chasing me. That next weekend, we went to a Baptist church, Newburgh, Missouri. Brother J. Milo Haynes was the preacher, and he preached the ABCs of salvation, and it was like, I'm the only one in the room in this church, and he's telling me how I can become a believer. A, admit your sin before Almighty God. B, believe in Jesus Christ alone to be your Savior. C, confess Him right now as the Lord of your life. Then he gave an invitation after that short message. I ran down to the front. I ran. I was the only one. Only one in the church that got saved that day. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Son, God's going to use you. I don't know what's happening in your life today, but God's going to use you." Never forget that 75-year-old man. He looked like a dinosaur to me at 20. Everybody's 75 is ancient.
Yeah.
But he had a love and a sparkle in his eye. That got me started. I was discipled on the base by some Christian men who had become believers, and began to memorize scripture. And out of the blue, I got a call into the office of my CO, my company commanding officer, and he said, and he was shocked. He said, I'm reading a letter from the general of the post. He read it out loud. He says, "We are going to discharge you honorably.
Wow.
Rather than court-martialing you for the good of the service, we're going to get rid of you, and we can't give you a dishonorable discharge because we haven't court-martialed you." So, in other words, grace just washed over me.
For the good of the Army, we're going to get rid of Brian Simmons.
That will tell you right there where I was in my life. So to make the story quick here, I took a bus ride home, 5-6 hour bus ride, found out there was a group of hippies in our city that had prayer meetings, and somebody told me, "Yeah, they're praying for you, Brian."
No.
these hippies are praying for your salvation. They'd all come to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And they knew I was in trouble, and I was like the leader of the pack. I was the guy
Okay, so
bringing...
you were kind of the guy everybody followed.
Oh.
You got the party going.
Absolutely.
Let's get the party started.
I was the party on two legs.
Okay, so now they're saved, and they're praying for Brian Simmons in the Army.
Yep. And imagine me coming and knocking on the door.
Whoa.
It was like Peter, getting out of prison, and Rhoda comes to the door and says, oh, it's probably his angel. I'm knocking on the door, this Bible study, upstairs apartment. Who would answer the door but Candace Williams?
She answers the door.
She answers the door, and she looks at me and says, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm a believer now.
Now, did you know her before?
We went to school together. I knew her, but she was like prima donna, beautiful. She was homecoming queen. She was everything.
Was she a queen?
Oh, yeah. She was like spectacular in our school.
And she was way above you.
And I'm like trash.
Okay, so you thought she was this beautiful...
Oh, I still do, yeah.
Yeah, and what was she a Christian in school?
Nope. The Lord swept through our community and put a sickle to the hearts of hundreds and hundreds of young people.
That was the Jesus movement.
The Jesus movement in 1971.
Okay, so there was something like 2 million teenagers were saved in America in 4 years.
I'm telling you, we were part of that.
Yeah.
And our community, huge numbers. Here's the crazy thing. Within 3 weeks, I am leading 200-300 young people, and I knew nothing about Jesus.
You've only found God for like 3 months.
No, maybe a month.
A month.
A month. And I've got this group of young people sitting at my feet wanting me to teach them.
And you got the homecoming queen, opens the door,
Right.
Looks in your eyes. What happened when she looked in your eyes?
Unbelief. She didn't believe. Of course, she didn't love me at that point. I was a pain. I was like... She even said when I walked the halls at high school, she would make sure she didn't look at me or go my direction because I was a mess.
Wow.
So, yeah, I ended up courting her and dating her. And
how soon after?
Really, really fast. It
Weeks.
seems like the story of my life is like fast. So within 3 weeks, we were engaged.
3 weeks.
I know, it's silly.
So you are ready to be court-martialed. You find God. You get honorably discharged. You meet a bunch of hippies that are praying for you. The homecoming queens, and 3 weeks. So this is like a month.
Yeah, within a month, 6 weeks, and we're planning a wedding. We said, we'll just have maybe 10 or 12 people, maybe not even that many. Let's just have a best man and a maid of honor and a preacher. Well, our friends all heard about it and said, no, we gotta have like you're like our leader, you got to have a real wedding.
A party.
We had 300 people show up in a 3 weeks notice. And it
3
was
weeks
awesome.
notice.
Yeah.
300 massive party, wedding feast like the kingdom.
Some of our buddies, some of our Jesus people, kids, and none of them were much older than I. So we made a vow in our hearts at the wedding altar that we would go to the mission field, that we would serve God.
In your wedding?
We put it on our wedding cake. We put go into all the world and preach the gospel on our wedding cake.
A wedding vow on your cake.
Exactly. And we at the altar, we made that commitment. Looked each other in the eyes. We are going to go where the gospel's never been, and we're going to bring back Jesus Christ by bringing one more tribe, one more language into the Word of God. It will be one less tribe to reach for the gospel.
How did you even think of that in 2 months?
Holy Spirit. I mean, nobody taught me that.
So you get from God a desire to go to an unreached tribe that has no knowledge of Jesus within 2 months.
Exactly. But keep in mind, I was an unreached pagan. I was one that my conversion, Wesley, it was radical. It was so radical. None of my friends believed it. And they took me, I still remember them trying to take me in their car and say, hey, I've got some really good pot. I got some hashish. Come on. We know you, Brian. We know you, man. This is all going to fade. I mean, it's a kick for a while, but here, they'd pass a joint to me, and I'd say, you know what I really think about this? I quoted the one Bible verse I'd memorized. God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. They got so mad at me, they threw me out of the car, and most of them I've never seen again, never went back.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a radical, radical conversion. So after we got married, we made the commitment to go into Bible college, and we finished that, and we went into New Tribes Mission, and we finished boot camp for a year, And one thing I'd want you to know, Wesley, about our boot camp, it was intense. It's like you get the boot right where you need it, you know? And nobody graduated unless everybody said they were ready. So we had 50 people, most of them couples, some of them singles. And at the end of the semester, they would write all the names on the board, and everybody had to say that person is ready to go. And if one person said that person's not ready to go, then I had to deal with that issue with that person and settle any issue that might be between us. So it was intense boot camp. Community, tight community where you deal with your issues, keep short accounts. And,
everybody knows everybody.
Everybody knows. Where we lived, we had two. By the time we got to boot camp, we had 2 toddlers, and we lived in a room that is, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, your living room was bigger than our whole apartment.
Wow.
Kitchen, 1 bedroom.
With 2 little babies.
With 2 babies.
So you're probably, 24 now?
We're 23.
23 years old.
23.
2 little babies in boot camp Bible school.
Yeah.
To learn language, how to crack a language.
Well, that was part of it. They were really trying to crack us. God was really trying to crack us first. And then after boot camp, we went to language training, linguistic school for a year. And that was, I think, one of the hardest things I've ever done.
What is linguistic school?
Linguistics is the study of language where you learn the science of language, how it forms. You start with the phonetic sounds and then the phonemics, which is the sounds that matter. And then you get into grammar, prefix, suffix. There's actually languages with an infix in the middle of a word. And we basically have to take a language we don't know, we analyze it, and we do a write-up. And that prepares us for going into the tribe and doing an unwritten language. So it was difficult. I remember spending 14, 16-hour days, headaches. I learned to drink coffee at that time.
Wow.
It was absolutely hard. And they told me when I finished, they said, you're going to be okay, but barely. Said, you're going to really need help. I said, well, I have a God that will help me. So we went to the jungle.
Now, these are Christian linguistics?
Yeah, it was Christian.
Was it like Wycliffe?
Very similar. We actually used their training model.
So they teach you the science of speech and language. You're going to have to go and learn the other people's language.
Without any
help.
There's no Rosetta Stone or Babbel or any software to help you. You just scratch. You have to point. You have to learn words.
Tree, sun, cow.
Until I found out later when I pointed, they don't point. They don't use their finger to point. They use their lips to point.
No.
Yeah, they point with their lip. So everything you ever learned, it gets turned upside down when you're in a tribal culture. You know nothing. You know none of their language. You don't know anything that's going on around you. You feel like you're an infant surrounded by all these giants. And we had to crawl our way into learning how to say a phrase, learning how to make a sentence or two, until finally I could have a dialogue and I could talk to them like I'm talking with you now.
No.
And
okay, so you're at what age when you go to your first tribe?
When I walked into the village the first time, I was 30 years old. And we had arranged for the people to make a very short runway, airstrip out of grass. They knock trees down, burn it field, and then basically make a place for the plane to land. It was a Cessna 185.
Are you in the mountains of Panama?
Yeah. And it's a very specialized airplane that can land and take off in a jungle airstrip like that. Oversized wheels, tricycle gear. It's a very unique airplane. You can't take very much weight to get in and out. I'll never forget getting off the plane for the first time. The very words I heard coming into my ear. Imagine, first time in the jungle, kill Brian.
Really?
Kill Brian. These are the sounds coming into my ear. I'm not translating. It's the sound coming into my ear right now.
You
kill
heard this?
Brian. No, they were saying it. They were shouting, kill Brian.
Who's saying
Jumping up and down. The men in the village had gathered around the airplane and were shouting, kill Brian. I freaked. I thought I was going to die right there. My first encounter. What a short ministry we're going to have, He lands, he becomes a martyr. I find out later the word kill means uncle in their language.
Oh.
They were shouting, Uncle Brian is here. They were celebrating our arrival, and I thought they were going to cook me alive.
Are you all alone?
Candace is with me at this point.
So your wife is with you. You have, are they wearing clothes?
Barely.
Barely.
The men. The men. The women, topless.
Topless. The men maybe a G-string.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're jumping up and down with spears. You're on a tribal mountain jungle.
Kill Brian.
And they're all yelling, "Kill Brian! Kill Brian!" Kill.
But it's really Uncle Brian.
Yeah.
They were celebrating. So that was my number one language lesson.
How scared were you?
I was scared. I was so scared. There was one guy who had a little bit of Spanish, and he came over to me and whispered in my ear. He said, "La palabra kill en nuestro lenguaje tiene sentido de tío." The word kill in our language has the meaning of uncle. I said, I'm not going to die.
So you thought you were going to die.
Oh, yeah.
That's
so that
amazing.
began our journey there in the tribe. We lived there for 8 years, came home one time in 8 years.
One time?
Our son David was born there. Candace was pregnant when we left. I had pastors so mad at me. I had so much persecution over taking my pregnant wife to the jungle, taking her to Panama. People told me how wrong it was, what a pathetic human being I was, and how dare I take my pregnant wife off to another land.
And in a way, they were partly right, because you almost did die.
It didn't make sense, but we almost died more than once, multiple times. Our son David was born there in 1980. And we spent virtually the 80s. I like to say, people were under the disco ball.
Yeah.
We were under a mosquito net.
Wow.
For 9 years, we were there and were able to learn the language. We adapted 100% to their culture. My wife wore their outfit, including a top. They had a certain artistic type of clothing that they would make. We'd bring material in, and they were tremendous sewers. And they would sew these cloths together and make blouses. And my wife would wear what they wore. I didn't wear a shirt because they didn't wear a shirt. I'd go out hunting with them. I killed wild pig, shorts all the time.
Sandals?
Yeah, sadly I went barefoot a lot, but I got worms so many times from going barefoot.
So you'd run through the jungle trails barefoot?
Well, no, when I'll go out of the village, I would put on some old tennis shoes.
Okay. Now, how many people spoke this language?
Well, the Kuna people, there's about 30,000 Kuna people, but the Paya Kuna dialect, which is distinct, there's some, it would be like Spanish and Portuguese. It's close, but you really need a new translation. So the island Kuna people had a translation of the New Testament, but the Paya Kuna people did not even have their language in written form. So that's where I was sent.
And how many people would that be?
Under 2,000.
So you gave 8 years of your life to bring God's word to 2,000 people.
That's right. And they're worth it. Their
Did you
souls,
question that?
Never.
Never.
The souls, I would weep for them even before I met them. I'd see them in my dreams. And
Really?
we would weep and cry. My wife and I would hold hands and pray for our time before we even left the U.S.
Could they feel that love?
I hope so. Initially, my heart got dry. My heart got cold. They stole everything from us that wasn't nailed down. Like if we put clothes out to dry, you'd kiss them goodbye. You'd never see them. And the next day you'd see them wearing your clothes, Usually 2 or 3 people, they'd cut it in different pieces. But, the mothers would bring their babies to our hut and no diapers, and baby would have their accident, and the moms would run out laughing, and we'd have to clean it up over and over and over.
So they had they didn't have hospitality.
No, they had no hospitality ministry operating at that time. And honestly, Wesley, my heart got cold. I got dry. And I still remember the day when I got so upset when one guy came over and, like, for the 10th time, wanted us to help him and feed him. And I it's so ashamed to say it, but that got a hold of me. The Lord really got a hold of me. That night under a mosquito net, I prayed. I said, Lord, you've got to come and break open this village. You sent me here to reach this people. And the Lord, not audibly, but the Lord spoke to me. He said, no, I didn't bring you here to reach these people. I brought you here to reach you. And if I could reach you, I could reach anyone. And
Wow.
I just broke. that all night, didn't sleep a bit that night. And in my tears, I resolved that I would, in the morning, I'd go to every person in the village, that's a lot of people, and ask them to forgive me.
Really?
That was my heart's desire. So the first hut I went to, Luis and Mika, our next door neighbors, they immediately began to cry. Spirit of the Lord came on them. They're just weeping, and I'm crying. And I don't know that any of us knew why. I went to the next hut, and same thing. By the time I got to the third hut, they were coming out of the shadow of their hut, coming outside, falling into the dirt, crying and weeping and shaking under the power of
Really?
God. And the fourth, fifth, all the way through the village, a long day. I call it my trail of tears. By the end of that day, I had gone to every single person. The Spirit of God had fallen, and a true awakening visited that forgotten jungle village that not even on lots of maps. But
Wow.
God knows their heart, knows their name, and he knows how to reach them. And that began our evangelism of the village. They began to gather at our hut twice a day.
Twice a day?
The whole village would come, and I would preach, I would teach in their language, I would give them the gospel. I can remember teaching them Luke 1:37, Pab gadin keg pechogel kegi malku, Pab gadin pel nabar imalkudo. With God, you can't say there's an impossibility. All things are possible with God.
Wow.
That was the first verse that I memorized in their language, and they memorized it, and I ingrained in their hearts by the Spirit of God, our God, Pab Tumadi, his name, our God, he can do anything. There's no impossibility. And we saw miracles. Our daughter was bitten by a snake. I think you know
A
some of that
venomous
story.
snake?
Yeah, it was a 5-foot-long bushmaster. Those that are listening, you can Google what a bushmaster snake is, and you'll be surprised. It's a horrible snake. They call it 24 hours is what they call it. Their nickname for that snake is 24 hours because you'll be dead in 24 hours. Our daughter was filled with venom on her ankle. She was climbing a tree, and a snake was on the branch of the tree, latched onto her, and here she is hanging from the branch of the tree with a snake dangling from
A
her
5-footer.
5 foot
Did people
long.
see it?
Yeah, they saw it.
And they knew exactly what snake it is.
Oh, yeah, they were, it impacted hundreds of people, what God did over the next few days. They carried her to our hut. I began to pray for her. This is such a supernatural story. People are going to, some of your listeners are going to have a hard time believing this. But I took her into our hut, began to pray for her. As I did, it was like tens of thousands of stinging, burning ants came from underneath the bed where I put her on our foam mattress. Suddenly, whoosh, just underneath the bed, swarms of fire ants.
Real? This really happened?
Oh, yeah. Growing up my legs, stinging me, and coming onto her. And I'm interceding and praying because she's in such pain, and her leg is swelling up the size of a man's leg. She was 7 years old when this happened.
Whoa.
Just a little girl.
How big swelling like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like a man's leg.
At his thigh?
All the way up. And it was just going from the ankle. You could almost watch the swelling go up. And so I took her into another room in our hut.
So she's on a bed, you're praying, and now thousands of fire ants come out of the ground.
It's horrible. Right under. What were they doing? I mean, how could this be? So I take her into another room of the house. I again began to pray, and by this time I am really interceding. I'm praying loud, crazy, bold prayers. I didn't come here to bury my daughter, Lord. You didn't send us here to take her life. Hornets materialized in the room while I'm praying.
What?
In another section of the house, stinging hornets began, hundreds of them, coming at me, stinging me, my face, my hands, my chest.
Real black hornets?
Oh, yeah. These are real.
Biting you?
Absolutely. Had the marks to show it. And I'm praying over joy, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, this has to be witchcraft. This has to be a very powerful witchcraft curse. First the snake bite, then the ants, and now hornets. And in the Bible, hornets are often demonic powers. So I cried out to the Lord, and I gave him 1 Corinthians 10:13. It's always good to have the Word of God in your heart. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, God will not test you beyond what you're able to endure, and he will provide a way out. He's faithful. And I said, Lord, I can't endure this. I love my daughter. I love you. But I cannot take this anymore. And like a wind, like an invisible wind and hand just swept right through our hut, and all of those hornets disappeared. And the ants disappeared. But I still have a dying daughter in front of me.
Was there an open window or something?
Yeah.
They went out?
I don't even know or care. They just were swept out.
Amazing.
So now I'm back to praying, and she's starting to hemorrhage from her eyes, nose, ears, and lips. The venom causes you to bleed, to seep blood. It's like Jesus in the garden, sweat drops of blood. And with my own daughter now, I'm seeing these little crimson dots coming out of her face and skin. So I just prayed all night. I was up all night with her, not knowing if she was going to see the light of day. She's slipping into a coma. Her swelling had now gone up to her waist. And I said, God, only you. Luke 1:37. With God, there's no such thing as impossibility. All things are possible with God. Early that morning, the airplane never comes in early in the morning because of the fog, because of the mist in the jungle. Early that morning, I hear the sound of our airplane coming in. The pilot said, I felt God told me. And this is like a Baptist pilot that doesn't necessarily
feel God.
Yeah, right. And he said, I really felt God told me to come in early this morning. What's up? I said, well, wait right here. My daughter was bit by a snake. We bring her across the river. We had to cross the river in a canoe to get to the airstrip. And as we're loading her on the plane, out of the airplane comes our partners who tell us right there on the airstrip, while I'm loading my dying daughter onto the airplane, they say, we're leaving. We're quitting. We can't take this anymore. I said, well, thanks. We'll have to talk later, bro. I mean, I got to take care of my daughter. So the pilot and I and Joy, who was laid down on a stretcher in the plane, we had to take the seats out. We flew to Panama City, a 2-hour flight over the jungle, and got her some medical care. And the good news is the Lord healed her. The Lord spared her life.
Wow.
And
she was how many hours before she had any?
Every bit of 24 hours.
So she should have been dead.
Yeah, exactly. She beat those odds.
She was 8.
She was 7. Yeah,
7, and a 5-foot snake.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she could have been dead in 10 hours.
Right.
Easy.
A little girl. I mean, she's just a little darling, anybody's daughter.
Wow.
Sweetheart. Well, I think you know this, but after we pastored for 18 years, who would take over our church that we started but Joy and her husband, who was my executive pastor. So the miracle girl ended up just bringing miracles. And to this day, she still carries the presence of the Lord, the beauty of the Lord.
Wow.
She's absolutely was instrumental in leading our village to the Lord.
Really? From that miracle? Mm-hmm. Then the village just more came.
On that one and a few others.
Now, just one more story, and then I want to get to your Passion Translation. When did the traumatic time going down the river happen with your babies?
That was the second time into the village. We'd gone into the village, set up a hut, get our house ready, and then we went back out to the city to get our kids and 3-month supplies and take a 3-day canoe ride up 2 different rivers to get to the Pucoro River where we were at.
3-day canoes.
Yeah.
Living in the jungle.
Yep.
Getting off on a bank and sleeping in hammocks or something.
Yeah.
Are there animals?
Of course, yeah. So it was about halfway in that journey when, I'll never forget it, our canoe was loaded. We had supplies, our family. By that time, there's 5 of us. Our son had been born there, so our 2 girls that were 7 and 8, and then our son, who was 5 months old, sitting on top of all our cargo. And we pull off the bank, and I look, and all of a sudden I see a wave of water coming down from upstream. And it was massive. It was so big, there was huge trees, massive trees, bobbing up and down in that wave, tsunami-like wave rushing down river. Apparently there was a flood up in the mountains.
A flood happened in the mountains?
A flash flood, apparently.
So you see like a one wave coming at you. How many feet?
Well, it was probably 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet.
On a river.
On a river. And of course the river's swelling, and then this wave's coming, and it picked up our canoe and threw us like slow motion. I mean, just picked us up and dumped all of our supplies, our lives, our canoe, our motor, threw it all upside down in the river. But my 4 family members, my wife, 3 kids, they're all scattered. They were thrown in different places. And Candace was able to get David and our son, 5-month-old son, and hold him above his head above water. She's going down, but
How wide is this river?
Normally it was maybe 100 yards, but with this flood now, there were houses on stilts on the bank, and we were going by the very top of the houses on stilts on the bank.
Oh my goodness.
That's how much of water.
So this is a massive river.
Massive demonic flood trying to kill us. And
so you're in the middle of the river?
Yeah.
Like this huge.
No way you would try to swim because of the trees and just the multitude, the massive waves.
And she's holding your baby above her head.
And I see her. I look over there and I say, honey, keep him safe.
Where are the other kids?
I'm swimming over to Joy. I get her, the youngest. Then I get David. And then I get Charity, our oldest. At one by one, I swim, get him, put him on the canoe. But we're all racing down the river.
You're going downstream.
Oh, yeah, we're racing down while I'm doing this. And then Candace and our son David, they finally come over, are able to paddle over to the overturned canoe, and we're all trying to hold the slippery
So
bottom.
there's an upside down canoe, slippery,
down canoe.
And you're holding your baby, a 5-month baby.
Right, and my 2 little darling daughters. And here the 5 of us are. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, we're going to go to the ocean. Because this thing, how are you going to get out of this? How am I going to get all 5 of us safe to the bank of a river in this flood?
And it's massive.
Massive. At this point, it's maybe 250 yards wide. But the current's so strong, I wouldn't want to try it hardly myself, let alone trying to take one of my family members. So all I did is we prayed. We prayed on that overturned canoe.
On one canoe.
One canoe. Long canoe, empty now.
Where are the natives?
Well, we're in an isolated area. There's nobody living out there.
Were you alone trying up the...
I had another gringo. I had another...
So you didn't even have any locals?
I'll tell you what. No, we didn't. And I had an experienced missionary that went with us. After that accident where we almost all died, he left and went home and had to get counseling and emotional healing because of...
Traumatized.
We're all at the point of death.
So have you got him? Is he saved?
He's there.
Okay.
And we're all screaming out to God. And I'm one of the many times angels came to our rescue. From nowhere, 5 or 6 men on the other side of the river in little tiny canoes paddled out, standing up. And they paddled themselves out to where we were, and one by one rescued my wife and David. Then they rescued Joy, and they rescued Charity.
And
now,
you're
keep
still
in mind,
going down the river.
We're still racing down river.
They go down, they grab one, and they go down farther, drop that one off, and
with nothing but jungle between them. So I'm thinking, how are we ever going to get reunited?
How can you even find them?
Exactly. And now I'm the last one, and I've been on there a long time by this time. And again, one of those beautiful men, almost shining men, came on that little tiny canoe and pulled me out and took me to the riverbank. And I stood there and I cried. Grown man, I'm crying. I go, we almost drowned. And to this day, how are we going to get back? How am I going to find my wife and my baby and my 2 daughters? How are we going to get reunited? Just then, all of those canoes that had rescued, they all floated down to where I was. And we're hugging each other. I'm telling you, it was a reunion like you're going to have in heaven with your loved ones. It was so amazing. And then out of the corner of my eye, I look and I see something floating down the river. It was one of our suitcases. At that very moment, my wife is crying, saying, if I only had clean clothes and a diaper to put on our baby. Because we're all soaking wet. We have no clothes except what's on our backs. And Candace is saying, if I only had some dry clothes. Just then the suitcase comes floating down the river right to where we are, literally comes right to the bank.
It just by itself?
By itself. I open it up. Everything in there is bone dry, including diapers. And we cry all over again.
Wow.
But we had to sleep on the riverbank that night in the jungle. And we could hear way down somewhere across the jungle, we could hear witch doctors chanting.
Really?
bizarre. This was experiences that most people, living in North America have no clue what it was like. And then the miracle, of course, is to get us back in a canoe and go the next day. Our girls are crying, I don't want to go in a canoe, Daddy.
No kidding.
Don't take
How
me
old
in
are
a
they?
canoe. 7 and 8.
And so this is only a year before the snake.
Right. A year before the snake.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And you had how many of those type of calls? How many of these type of things?
I almost died 4 times with amoebic dysentery. My eyes sunk back in my head. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I lost, this is going to sound crazy, but I lost 30 pounds in 24 hours. Every ounce of fluid, everything in me came out of me.
So you should have been dead.
4
30
times.
pounds in 24 hours?
Yeah. I mean, I shriveled up like a prune. And it was some amoebic dysentery with a lot of witchcraft behind it. We were constantly facing demonic powers. They would wake me up in the middle of the night saying what they're going to do to me and my family. And I'd go out to see who was talking, and there's nobody out there.
But you'd hear voices.
Oh, I'd hear these voices. Yeah. Demonic powers. We would have people come from 3 or 4 days away in another village. They would come to sleep outside our hut. I'd wake up in the morning, and here's a family of natives sleeping out in the dirt in front of my hut. I said, what are you doing here? He said, this is the only place in the jungle where the demons don't torment us.
Really?
Is when we're right here around your hut.
That's what they said.
Yeah, that's
How
what
many
they
times
said.
this happened?
The presence of the Lord. More than once.
Wow.
So God was with us.
Okay,
God was-
two more things we want to hear just before we finish. You've had some God encounters, Jesus encounters. One where he touched your mind and increased your intelligence. And 2, when he commissioned you to translate the scriptures reverse. Instead of learning the language of the Indian tribe, you're now going to take the language of the white
Right.
Western world and you're going to make it dynamic,
Yes.
passionate. Tell us those 2 stories.
Well, the first one was after we had turned our church over in 2009. I'm asking the Lord what to do. I knew that we still had many years left, that God had plans for us. I just wanted to know what they are. He told us to go to the jungle, we went. He told us to come back to North America, we came. So give me another assignment. What do you want me to do? And I immediately, this thing rose up in me that I was to translate the New Testament, the Bible, the entire Bible. And I thought that's setting me up for a lot of problems. I said, Lord, you got to make this clear. If that's really you putting that in my heart, I figured my wife would get a dream because she has so many dreams every night. But he didn't give her a dream, but he came to me at 2 a.m, woke me up out of sleep. A fiery man comes walking through my wall 4 feet away from my bed.
Okay, so you're sleeping.
Yep.
You've prayed this prayer.
Yep.
You awaken.
I awoke to see my wall on fire and melt. My wall literally melt. And Jesus came through that wall and breathed on me.
So Jesus is a man of fire.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you saw a man in flames
Absolutely.
come through the wall, and then what happened?
He came to where I was, to my bedside. I fall to my knees on the side of my bed. And he said, I'm commissioning you to do this translation.
Okay, say that one more time. He comes through. Does he touch you?
He did eventually, but he came stand by my bed. I fall to my knees at my bedside.
Okay.
And he put his hand on me. And,
Fiery.
oh, yes. Oh. Oh.
You can feel it now?
Yep. And he blew on me.
Really?
He blew. Breath. He just blew on me. And then said, I'm commissioning you to translate the New Testament, the Bible, to do this work. And I promise
With
you.
words, he spoke.
He spoke. Yep. And he promised me. He promised me that he would help me and that he would give me secrets. Now, this bothers people when I say it, but it's the truth. He promised he would give me secrets that had not been revealed from the Hebrew language and from the text of the Bible, that he would help me and show me these things. The second thing he promised me is that I would be persecuted.
Really?
He promised me, he said, it'll begin in 2013 and it will increase the rest of your life. That's what he told me. and that I was to be prepared for it. And as the translation became mainstream, so would the persecution. He also said that it would be the most read translation after I was gone.
Really?
So this is my life mission. I'm doing it for my kids, my grandkids, your great-grandchildren, and that it is eventually, it's going to become a very common
When did you start
valued
that?
translation. I started in 2009, November. I started with the Song of Songs, my favorite book in the Bible.
And you've gone 8 years translating.
8 years.
And you finished the entire New Testament.
Completely done.
Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, and you're working on Isaiah.
I'm working on Isaiah now, so I have...
And so this came to you as a mandate from Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Nobody in their right mind would do this unless the Lord called them.
How many verses do you do a day when you're actually on?
Well, there were times in the Psalms where I was able to do 10 verses a day, which is just phenomenal. I really felt the Holy Spirit with me as I translated the Psalms. I do still to this day. Isaiah is taking me a little bit longer because I'm fascinated with some of the things I'm learning.
Wow.
So I have 30 books done now and 36 left to go.
Big ones.
Yeah, Isaiah's big. There's 66 chapters in Isaiah, 66 books in the Bible. It's like a miniature Bible.
Wow.
So it's been a fascinating journey. The people, I get emails, multiple emails daily, maybe a dozen a day. It used to be one a week, two a week. Now it's every day I get a dozen emails, Facebook messages from people whose lives have been turned around. They actually tell me they feel the breath. And they don't even know what happened to me, but they feel as they're reading, they feel the breath of God on it.
And he breathed on you.
He did breathe on me. And I do want to say, it doesn't mean everything I'm translating is perfect. It doesn't mean...
It's a translation.
And I'm not putting, anything I'm doing, I'm not even coming close to putting it to the inspired text of the original autographs that Peter wrote, that Paul wrote, that Matthew wrote. I'm just saying he breathed on me like he did his disciples in the upper room.
Wow. Wow.
And since then, he's given me downloads, secrets that I just can't even hardly believe.
Now tell me, just as we come to a close here, he touched your mind. Was that the same time or is that a different time?
No, that was on New Year's Eve about 3 years later.
Okay.
And I was about to do Romans, and that's a masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece.
And I had a dream, and in the dream, the Lord came to me, and he put his forefinger on my forehead at the hairline, right at the top of your forehead, at the hairline in the middle.
I'm touching it now.
Yep, right there. And he said, looked at me and said, I'm going to increase your capacity to know me. I'm going to increase your ability to translate and to know me by 1%. And I thought, 1%,
so you're dreaming,
is that all?
Says, I'm going to increase your capacity to know me and to translate.
Yeah. It's like your intellect. I'm going to increase your mind's ability to understand. And he said 1%. And I thought to myself,
in the dream?
In the dream, I'm thinking, but I want 10%. Lord, I want more than just 1%. I want to have greater capacity. And then later I found out from a friend who is in the UK, who is a Brainmapper. She's one of the top scientists in the world that has mapped the human brain. She asked me to tell her exactly where Jesus touched me. And she said, that is the very point of your cognitive abilities. That I said, well, what about 1%? She said, look, if you got 1%, you have no clue what a 1% increase would mean.
She's the most expert in the world.
One of them, yeah.
So what did she say 1% does?
Well, it just gives you abilities that other people may not have to understand and to perceive. And I'm finding that when I'm studying Hebrew and Greek. I'm not a Hebrew or Greek scholar. I've never pretended
You're a
to be one.
linguistics expert.
I'm a linguist.
And so you've taken all the tools of Hebrew and Greek. You've got all these scientific tools.
I've memorized 17 books of the Bible.
What?
I committed it to memory.
When?
The first 7 years I was a believer.
You memorized what books?
Well, most of the New Testament. 17 books of the New Testament.
When you were
Paul's
a new
letters.
believer.
Yeah, it's the only way I could get my mind out of drugs and out of torment. Was
So
Scripture.
you memorized.
I was a
And
Baptist.
and you walk and chant, walk and chant.
Absolutely. We had charts. My wife would every day we'd spend an hour, and she would review what I'd learned with an open Bible, and I'd quote Book of Romans, and she would, if I get stuck, she'd help me.
What translation?
NIV.
Wow. So, okay, after this dream, did you notice an increase?
Romans was probably the easiest book I translated, and I've had less editing that's had to be done, and I get more feedback from that.
And that happened right after that dream?
Yeah.
And that's a difficult book.
It's a masterpiece.
It is.
Yeah, Paul is a genius. So God is really wanting his word to get out there. He really wants his people to know his heart, to know his love. And I think, sadly, Bible translators have operated out of their mind and not the spirit. And they've given us brilliant, literal, at times hyper-literal, so sterile literal translations. And here's the thing, most evangelicals, and I understand this, we don't want to add to the Word of God, right? We don't want to add to the Scriptures. Why don't we ever mention taking away from the Scriptures? What about all of the times we've taken away the supernatural, the power of God, the emotion of his heart, the things that move him? Instead of saying Jesus wept, we translated tears streamed down Jesus' cheek. See, you get a picture. So we're trying to bring the Word of God in a vivid, like high def, you know, 3D, like top, inescapable impact the human heart. And I'm not trying to make the most hyper literal translation. We've got lots of those already. I think we have enough. I don't think we need another literal translation.
Go to Bible Gateway and there's like,
oh yeah,
who knows how. So you're now what age today?
66.
66. And the 66 books of the Bible, and you have 39 more.
36.
36 more, and you are away on a mission, and this will be an incredible life of Brian Simmons, the dark, tormented hippie that God has rescued, preserved, saved, protected, and brought on an amazing journey of life.
Give me a wonderful wife and
Candace,
3 kids.
The woman who opened the door.
She was the one that prayed it in. It's her fault.
Well, God bless you, Brian. It's great to see
Thank you, my friend. Love
and great testimony. We're going to be with you in Israel in a couple months, and you're doing the Israel tour, and everybody can go on your website. What's your website of all these tours and things?
tptisraeltour.com.
TPT stands for The Passion Translation.
Right.
Everything's about the Passion Translation.
That's right. tptisraeltour.com, tptbibleschool.com.
Bible school. So you can look this up. Go and look Brian Simmons up on the internet, the Passion Translation. See it, get it, read it, and your heart will be strangely warmed like that fiery visitation he had of Jesus Christ. God bless you all. We had a tremendous time. Check out all our podcasts, both before and after. There's so many that you have to hear. Incredible stories. We love you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Conversions on the Shiloh Global Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to help us continue to make these great programs, we encourage you to donate at our website, wesleystacycampbell.com. Also, check out Stacy Campbell's Shiloh Company Prophetic Mentorship, where you too can be mentored in the prophetic by Stacy herself. Download our free Shiloh Global app, available on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. On the app, you can hear more programs not listed on the Charisma Podcast Network. Finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes, the Charisma Podcast Network, or wherever you listen to podcasts.